As the legendary voice of Fleetwood Mac, the first woman to be inducted twice into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the bohemian muse who shaped an entire generation, Stevie Nicks has become an eternal icon of rock music. She owns a fortune exceeding $120 million, with million-dollar mansions nestled in the Hollywood Hills and Pacific Palisades, travels by private jet, and lives surrounded by handmade shawls, cashmere blankets, the soft glow of scented candles, and handwritten lyrics that echo through her home. But behind the stage lights lies a life riddled with storms, addiction that nearly killed her, loves that broke her, and a painful abortion that haunted her for years. So what helped Stevie Nicks rise above it all? Not just to survive, but to burn brighter than ever, like a living legend. And what was the true cost of that dazzling spotlight? Stevie Nicks, a name that would one day become an immortal icon of rock, was born on May 26, 1948, in Phoenix, Arizona. But few know that her path to stardom didn't begin in a gleaming studio or under dazzling stage lights. It began in a chaotic childhood and long nights filled with doubt. Her father, Jess Nicks, was a business executive, a job that kept the family moving from state to state. Arizona, New Mexico, California, Texas, Utah, each place marked a new beginning, but also a painful uprooting. For a child, it wasn't easy. Each move meant losing friends, changing schools, and starting over. But amidst that swirling instability, one thing remained unshakable in Stevie's soul: music. Her grandfather, Aaron Jess A.J. Nicks, had once been a country singer who never found fame, but carried within him an undying love for music. He was the one who gave Stevie her first guitar, and the first to teach her to hum simple, heartfelt melodies. In a small room under the dim glow of yellow light, Stevie and her grandfather would sit close together, singing old love songs, sometimes "You Are My Sunshine," sometimes forgotten country ballads. For Stevie, those were more than music lessons. They were the first time she realized music isn't just sound, it's a way to touch the soul, a truth she would carry forever. Imagine this: a 6-year-old girl with messy blonde hair, sitting by a cracked window in a tiny Salt Lake City room. Moonlight streams through tattered curtains as she sings softly, as if telling secrets to the universe. No audience, no spotlight, just a voice, and a fragile hope that someday music would carry her beyond those bare walls. There were nights Stevie sat in that tiny room, moonlight spilling through a broken window, her stomach empty because the rent had drained everything. She wondered if her voice would ever break through those thin walls. The loneliness of that nomadic childhood seemed to forge in Stevie a profound inner world. She started keeping journals from a young age, and those pages would one day become the seeds of hundreds of songs about love, heartbreak, faith, and rebirth. Her life took a turn during her senior year at Menlo Atherton High School, California. At a student party, she met Lindsey Buckingham, a boy with haunted eyes and fingers that glided across guitar strings as if whispering to time itself. When they sang "California Dreamin'" by the Mamas and the Papas together, something sparked. Not just harmony, but the merging of two kindred spirits. Soon after, Stevie and Lindsey joined Fritz, a local rock band that opened for legends like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. On stage, Stevie often stood at the back, tambourine in hand, long hair cascading, her voice rising like wind across a desert, ethereal, unmistakable. But in 1972, Fritz disbanded. Doors that once seemed open quickly slammed shut, left with just each other, a dog, a beat-up car, and a few crumpled bills. Stevie and Lindsey headed to Los Angeles, the city of dreams and nightmares. Stevie waited tables at Bob's Big Boy and cleaned houses to make ends meet. There were nights she lay awake in their tiny apartment, hands cracked from scrubbing dishes, wondering whether music was really meant for her. In 1973, they self-released an album, Buckingham Nicks. It was all they had: music, belief, and a bit of innocence. But the album flopped commercially. Record labels passed. Audiences were indifferent. The future had never looked dimmer. Yet, even in hunger, Stevie believed her voice would be heard, not for fame, but to touch someone's heart. On scraps of old paper and faded notebooks, she wrote about pain, longing, and the vague intuition that the day would come. In those darkest days, songs like Landslide, Rhiannon, and other poetry-laced anthems began to form, songs that would one day become legendary. I didn't write those songs to be famous. I wrote them to save myself from sadness. Stevie Nicks. One of the most touching parts of her story: despite their poverty, Stevie saved enough to care for a dog, a loyal companion, her only comfort on many lonely nights. In that cramped apartment, with her old guitar, a single candle, and a little dog curled at her feet, Stevie Nicks kept writing and kept believing. Then, destiny knocked. One December afternoon in 1974, Mick Fleetwood, drummer for Fleetwood Mac, was looking for a new guitarist after a member left the band. While listening to a tape of Buckingham Nicks in a recording studio, he was drawn not only to Lindsay's guitar work, but haunted by Stevie's voice. He called Lindsay, offering him a spot in the band. But Lindsay replied, simply and firmly, "I won't go unless Stevie comes with me." That moment opened a whole new chapter in Stevie's life. She had no idea that just a few years later, she would become the face of one of the greatest bands in rock history. But in that moment, she was just a determined girl clutching her last chance, not for fame, but for the survival of a dream. From the cramped days in a tiny Los Angeles apartment, Stevie Nicks had no idea that fate was about to carry her to the brightest stage lights and the greatest test of her life. On December 31st, 1974, Stevie Nicks and Lindsay Buckingham officially joined Fleetwood Mac. They brought not just voices and guitars, but a final sliver of hope after years of struggle. Their first album with the new lineup, Fleetwood Mac, 1975, was a breakthrough. The song Rhiannon, laced with irresistible mystique, quickly made Stevie the band's focal point. She wrote the song after reading about a Welsh goddess, and every time she performed it, she seemed to become that figure. Long hair flowing, shawl twirling, eyes distant like they had seen another realm. Landslide, a quiet ballad written by Stevie herself, felt like a confession. Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? A question that pierced the hearts of anyone who had ever felt life slip out of their grasp. The album was a massive success, selling millions, but it was only the prelude. In 1977, Rumors was born in the midst of breakups, fights, and raw pain within the band. They recorded at the record plant in Sausalito, California, where drama and artistry collided. Rumors, a storm of emotion, went on to sell over 40 million copies, becoming a legend in its own right. Dreams, written by Stevie, became Fleetwood Mac's only #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. A song that came to define an entire generation of strong yet scarred women. Do you remember the first time you heard Dreams on the radio? If you do, share it with us in the comments, because music is memory, and memory never fades. But the spotlight came at a price. Stevie turned to cocaine to cope with the pressure, something that nearly destroyed her. By the late 70s, she was exhausted, sleepless, living under crushing expectations and the constant need to be perfect. Even though cocaine brought her low, Stevie rose, transforming pain into timeless melody. In 1981, she released her first solo album, Belladonna. It wasn't just a milestone, it was a rebirth. She worked with Jimmy Iovine, not just a producer, but the first person to see Stevie as a solo star in her own right, pushing her to her creative limits to craft a masterpiece. Belladonna topped the Billboard 200, delivering hits like Edge of 17, Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Tom Petty, and Leather and Lace with Don Henley. Edge of 17 was a fierce, proud cry through grief. Just like the white-winged dove, sings a song sounds like she's singing. An image that would become iconic of Stevie herself, a white dove, alone but unbreakable. Not long after, The Wild Heart, 1983, carried that success forward. One of its standout tracks, Stand Back, was born after Stevie heard Little Red Corvette by Prince on the radio. She called him, and he showed up just hours later to play the synth part. A historic pop moment, born from a flash of highway inspiration. Rock a Little, 1985, continued the commercial streak, with hits like Talk to Me and I Can't Wait. Despite interruptions in recording due to Stevie entering rehab, her music kept soaring. Her style became legendary too. The shawls, long flowing dresses, platform boots, they weren't just outfits. They were symbols of freedom, individuality, and they shaped fashion through the 80s and beyond. In 1998, Stevie was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Fleetwood Mac. Then, in 2019, she made history as the first woman ever to be inducted twice, the second time as a solo artist. "You don't have to be perfect to live an extraordinary life," Stevie once said. "You just have to be honest with yourself and keep going, even in the dark." And when the applause fades, behind the curtain stands a very different Stevie. Mysterious, soulful, and dwelling in a glittering world of her own making. When the stage lights go out, Stevie Nicks doesn't retreat into the shadows. She steps into another world where every detail of life bears the mark of a master artist, a free soul, and a timeless icon of elegance. Pacific Palisades, the castle of the Bohemian Queen. The Pacific Palisades mansion Stevie bought for $9 million in 2005 is not just a home. It's a hidden kingdom nestled between hills and ocean waves. White stone walls hand-carved by Italian artisans, soaring ceilings adorned with murals of starlit skies, where Stevie once said she could feel the souls of unwritten songs. An infinity pool clings to the cliffside, seemingly melting into the Pacific Ocean, lined with black Greek marble that reflects the moonlight as she writes late into the night. When listed for $14 million in 2017, friends said, Stevie wasn't selling a house. She was selling a dream, where every brick hummed with melody. Santa Monica, the Gothic Muse's penthouse. Her Santa Monica penthouse, bought for around $3 million in 2004, is a lavish masterpiece with a personal imprint. A sweeping balcony encased in Swarovski crystal glass sparkles like jewels in the ocean sunset. Gothic bohemian interiors peak with a massive black canopy bed custom-made in Paris, where Stevie often lay listening to old demos. Her writing desk by the window wasn't just for notes. It was crafted from century-old rosewood, inlaid with 24-karat gold, a reminder that every note is a treasure. $3 million was just the beginning, a friend once joked, but the real value lies in the songs born there. Phoenix, Arizona. the House of Eternal Memories. Her childhood home in Phoenix, which Stevie repurchased and later sold for $3 million in 2007, shone without opulence. Still, she turned it into a nostalgic oasis. The backyard featured a small red sandstone fountain where she used to sing with her grandfather at dusk. The living room was lined with vintage Persian rugs, each telling a tale from her nomadic youth. An old rocking chair, what she called her childhood throne, was reupholstered in deep purple velvet, a tiny throne in a humble home. $3 million can't buy memories, Stevie once said, but I left a part of my soul in every corner. These houses were where Stevie paused, but her journey never stood still. Across America's long roads, another part of her remained, hidden behind the wheel of memory-laced vehicles. Black Mercedes-Benz SL-Class convertible, the nomadic Queen's carriage. The most iconic of Stevie's cars was a black Mercedes-Benz SL-Class convertible, a symbol of freedom in the 1980s. Imagine her driving down endless California highways, blonde hair whipping in the wind, crimson velvet seats cradling her like a mobile throne. Inside, her beloved guitar, ink-smudged notebooks, and a tiny cassette recorder ready to catch fleeting melodies. No official value is listed, but a restored 80s SL Class styled like Stevie's, with bespoke interiors and metallic black paint, could easily hit $100,000 today. It wasn't just a car, she once said. It was my wings through dreams. Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, the wild companion. Though not known for owning a vast car collection, Stevie was once spotted with a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon in the 90s, a rugged, boxy beast echoing the Arizona deserts of her childhood. Rumored to be painted deep emerald green with golden rims and pearl-white handcrafted leather interiors, it was like a palace on wheels. Originally priced around $50,000 with Stevie's luxurious custom touches, collectors today might value it at over $200,000. She'd drive it through mountain roads, stop by cliffs to write under moonlight, turning it into part of her bohemian legend. Crimson Learjet, a gift of excess from Don Henley. Not quite a car, but unforgettable nonetheless. A crimson-red Learjet Don Henley once rented for Stevie in the 70s, a symbol of luxury beyond imagination. A flight on such a jet could cost $10,000 back then, and with custom paint, faux fur, and walnut interiors, it was peak rock and roll glam. Stevie recalled, "I stepped on board in my high-heeled boots and shawl. It felt like I was queen of the sky." Though temporary, it became part of her image, an artist who didn't need to own extravagance to make it legendary. Cadillac Eldorado, echoes of the early days. Before becoming a rock icon, Stevie drove a silver Cadillac Eldorado during her early days with Lindsey Buckingham. The long convertible, with sun-scorched brown leather seats, accompanied them on trips from San Francisco to LA. Worth around $10,000 in the 70s, it wasn't just a vehicle. It was a mobile studio where she hummed the first lines of Rhiannon. "I loved the freedom of lowering the top," she once said, "like the whole world was singing with me." If cars were Stevie's way of moving through cities, her everyday luxuries, from shawls to handwritten journals, were where she lived inside her soul. Though she never owned a private jet, Stevie Nicks made every flight a statement of elegance. In the 70s, she frequently flew on Fleetwood Mac's private jet, and who could forget that 1977 moment? Her hair flying out the window, silk shawl fluttering like a victorious flag. That jet, with white leather seats and crystal chandeliers overhead, cost tens of thousands per trip, a price worth paying for the wild freedom she carried. In 2017, stepping off a jet in Melbourne, She wore a black velvet cloak and glittering gold boots in the sun. Still Stevie, the eternal sky queen, for whom economy class was an alien concept. Stevie owns over 200 handcrafted shawls, each a work of art, from gold-embroidered Italian silks to French lace as thin as mist. One was woven just for Rhiannon, only worn under the full moon, shimmering like a spell. Another, dyed jet black with pearl edging, for sorrowful days. Each could fetch up to $5,000, but to Stevie, they are the soul of the stage. She also collects luxury cashmere blankets from Kashmir, each as soft as clouds, dyed in royal purples or wine reds. Recently, she gifted Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, a blanket worth thousands, wrapped in a wooden box engraved with his name, a gift from the Queen's heart. Stevie Nicks' lifestyle isn't about flaunting, it's about refined opulence, woven from memory, personality, art, and absolute freedom. Because to Stevie, living is a performance, bold and poetic. Luxury is a part of Stevie Nicks. But to focus solely on the mansions and shawls would be to overlook another side of her, a quiet strategist, a compassionate heart, and a tireless icon of inspiration. Investment when art becomes a living legacy. In 2020, Stevie Nicks stirred the music world when she sold 80% of the publishing rights to her songs to Primary Wave, in a deal valued between $80 to $100 million. A staggering number, but one entirely deserved. With tens of millions in royalties and touring income, Stevie hasn't just built a music empire. She lives like a queen in the kingdom she created. But this deal wasn't merely financial. It was a long-term vision to preserve her legacy. After acquiring her catalog, Primary Wave strategically placed Stevie's music in major films, ads, and media projects, bringing songs like Edge of 17 and Landslide to an entirely new generation. It was the kind of foresight only an artist who thinks far beyond the now could have. Meanwhile, her touring career continues to bring in millions. Her joint tour with Fleetwood Mac from 2018 to 2019 alone earned her over $12 million from just 60 nights on stage. I never thought of myself as a businesswoman, but I know how to let the music feed itself, Stevie once said, softly, yet full of conviction. Philanthropy. When an artist feels the pain of others. When conflict broke out in the Middle East, Stevie didn't show up at Walter Reed Hospital with cameras or fanfare. She brought music, personally gifting hundreds of tiny iPods filled with rock, soul, and her own songs to wounded veterans. One of the most touching moments. Stevie once sat for hours beside a bedridden soldier, playing Landslide on an iPod, just to see him smile. It was his first smile in months. This simple act birthed the Soldier's Angel charity in 2004, a heartfelt extension of Stevie's spirit to those who've given quietly. In 2015, the USO awarded her the Outstanding Achievement Award, honoring her deep yet discreet contributions. I don't just want to perform for people in tuxedos. I want to bring music to those who gave up their youth to protect our dreams, she once said. Social impact, the legacy of a trailblazing woman. As the only woman to be inducted twice into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Stevie paved the way for future generations of women to create without seeking permission. She is the model of independence, gentle yet unwavering, an artist who leads her life like her own masterpiece. Many famous musicians have called Stevie their muse. Sheryl Crow said she learned how to live truthfully through music thanks to Stevie. Harry Styles calls her his mythical rock grandma, often hugging her like family after every show. Taylor Swift has been directly influenced by her lyricism and performance style, and once sang with Stevie at the Grammys. With million-dollar deals, quiet acts of kindness, and a voice that continues to inspire, Stevie Nicks has proven that luxury isn't just about how you live, it's about how you give. There was a time when Stevie always appeared radiant before the public. Chiffon skirts flowing in the wind, a mesmerizing voice, and eyes full of mystery. But behind the scenes was a completely different story. When Fleetwood Mac became a global phenomenon with rumors, Stevie and the band members endured an unthinkable schedule. Interviews by day, studio at night, then straight to the stage the next morning. To keep up with that pace, Stevie began using cocaine. At first, it was just to stay awake, but soon, that white powder became an invisible chain tightening around her soul. She still performed, still shone, but night after night, her body grew frail, her voice hoarse, and inside, there was a fear no one knew. It wasn't until 1986, when a doctor told her, "Your nose has a hole in it," that Stevie finally admitted, "I'm going to die, and if I don't stop, all of my songs will become farewell bells." She entered rehab, a decision both lonely and brave. The pain in Stevie's life didn't only come from drugs. It also came from where no one would expect: love and kindness. In 1983, Robin Anderson, Stevie's closest friend, passed away from leukemia just days after giving birth to her son. So overwhelmed with grief she could barely breathe, Stevie made a surprising decision. She married Kim Anderson, Robin's widowed husband. Not because of romantic love, but from a naive belief that if she raised the baby, Robin wouldn't truly disappear. But sorrow can't be filled with duty. 3 months later, the marriage ended. Stevie left behind only one short sentence: "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I confused sacrifice with loss." Then came Lindsey Buckingham, bandmate, lover, the one who co-wrote timeless songs with her. Their love was once as beautiful as the song Crystal. But when differences became irreconcilable, they broke up. The problem was, they still had to stand on stage together, every night. Look into each other's eyes. Sing about each other. Every time I sing Dreams, I think of Lindsey. And I know he does too. Stevie also had a short relationship with Mick Fleetwood, the band's drummer. But that was when Mick was still married. The brief affair strained the band and left a lingering ache in everyone. A part of the song Sarah is believed to be a bittersweet goodbye to that relationship. And then came another kind of pain, quieter, more private. In 1979, during her relationship with Don Henley of the Eagles, Stevie became pregnant. But at the peak of her career, with all the pressure and wounds, she chose to terminate the pregnancy. Later, she admitted that Sarah, a gentle and mysterious song, was her unspoken regret. "I lost something that I can never get back." And then, as if fate was playing a cruel trick, the one person Stevie called the great love of my life, Joe Walsh, walked away. Not because of betrayal, but because of addiction. "I loved him with all I had, but I couldn't save him when I was barely holding on myself." She once said, "I'm not perfect. I've stumbled a lot, but I always return to music. It's the only place I feel forgiven." And maybe that's what made Stevie Nicks a legend. Not because she never fell, but because she always rose again, more graceful, brighter, and sang as if she had never been hurt. Scandal, if any, is just a blot of ink on white cloth. But Stevie turned the entire cloth into art. She didn't run from the darkness. She brought it to the stage, turned it into melody, and made the whole world listen. Some voices belong to a moment in time, but Stevie Nicks, she is a soul, and souls live forever. At 76, when many of her contemporaries have stepped away from the spotlight, Stevie Nicks still strides across the stage, wrapped in shawls, standing before a silver broomstick-shaped mic, singing with that husky, enchanting voice, as if nothing had ever hurt her. Her joint tour with Billy Joel in 2024 to 2025 proves it. Stadiums still fill up. New generations still sing along to every word of Landslide and Rhiannon as if they had just been released yesterday. With over 140 million records sold worldwide, Stevie Nicks is one of the most successful artists of all time. But what she leaves behind is more than numbers or charts. It's a way of life, freedom, honesty, and relentless creativity. She doesn't chase trends. She creates her own style. From music to fashion. From how she loves to how she hurts. The shawls, the cashmere blankets, the vintage jewelry. They're not just items. They're symbols of someone who lives every moment to the fullest. She shows them. You can fail, you can be broken, but if there's still a voice inside you, if there's still a melody in your heart, you can rise and shine again. Stevie is a beacon for those who ever thought they weren't pretty enough, strong enough, or perfect enough to chase their dreams. And she shows them. It's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself and stay true to the light you believe in. Stevie Nicks hasn't just lived a life. She has lived as a legend. From the girl singing softly under the moonlight to the bohemian queen of rock, from unhealed wounds to immortal love songs, she is proof that even the most fragile souls can shine the brightest if they dare to trust their own voice.